Because Senate Democrats want to amend the Bill of Rights. At least 48 of them do. 48 of them want to say, let's amend the United States Constitution and the free exercise clause of the First Amendment. Let's amend the guarantee of free speech. That's an extraordinary development. If passed, Senate Joint Resolution 19, which is the subject on the floor today, would give Congress and state governments the power to decide which Americans can speak in elections, what they can say, when they can say it, and how they say it. This measure would gut the free speech provisions of the First Amendment. It's a shocking proposal, made even more so by the fact it's supported by 48 Democratic senators and President Obama. I wonder if any of them have taken the time to see the writing on the wall of the museum down the street. In big, bold letters carved into concrete, it says, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech." That's in the United States Constitution. Our founders passed a Constitution, and then they said, well, we forgot to do the Bill of Rights. So they came back with the Bill of Rights. And this is in the First Amendment. Free speech is one of the defining characteristics of liberal democracies worldwide. No country has embraced free speech and protected it as much as has the United States of America. Other countries look to us as a model for this remarkable freedom. So why would anyone attempt to amend the Constitution, amend the Bill of Rights, and change the free exercise clause and change the free speech clause in the First Amendment? When we look at the Democratic leadership of the United States Senate, we see a pattern of using a gag rule to silence senators who were sent here on behalf of the people who elected them to represent their views. The majority leader has prevented Tennesseans, for example, from having their say through their senators, their elected officials, for years now, using the gag rule in this body to keep amendments from being considered and voting on. Obamacare, no amendment. Taxes, no amendment. National Labor Relations Board, no amendment. Egypt, Iran, Iraq, no amendment. I've said on this floor many times, it's like being invited to join the Grand Ole Opry and not being allowed to sing. But the consequences are much more serious than that. It's not just my amendment or my colleague Senator Corker's amendment. And it's not just Tennesseans' amendment. It's the voters of every state who've sent us here to have a say on their behalf. The senator from Wyoming, Senator Barrasso, has counted that since July of 2013, last year, only 14 Republican amendments and 9 Democratic amendments have received votes. That's an astounding number. There are 100 senators here, representing more than 300 million Americans. This is said to be the world's greatest deliberative body. In the new book, The American Senate, describing this body, it's quoted as saying that this is the one authentic touch of genius in the American political system. What makes it the one authentic touch of genius in the American political system? It is that you take a difficult message, a difficult bill, you put it on the floor, and you talk about it, and you talk about it, and you debate it, and you amend it, until finally you say that's enough, and 60 of us say it's time to cut off debate, let's vote and have a result. Yet in a year's time, there have only been 23 amendments to legislation that have received votes. Some members of this body are running for re-election after 6 years, never having had a vote on any amendment they offered on the Senate floor. Someone might well ask, well, what have you been doing? Then this summer, the Democrats extended the gag rule that's been on the Senate floor from the Senate floor to the Senate committee rooms. When some members of the Appropriations Committee, upon which I served, some bills were indefinitely postponed because the Senate leadership wanted to avoid difficult votes on those amendments. No vote on clean water, no vote on energy, no vote because it was a difficult vote. And now, in this provision, Democrats and the president are trying to extend the gag rule to the free speech clause of the First Amendment. What this proposal would do is give Congress the power to silence the groups or organizations that threaten their reelection. For example, The government could tell a gun owner in Johnson City, Tennessee, that he or she can't spend money to advocate in defense of Second Amendment rights if that speech falls too close to an election and threatens to influence the campaign of incumbents. Or similarly, Congress might tell Tennessee Right to Life, you can't advertise to protect the rights of the unborn. Congress could decide that such speech should be restricted or prohibited because incumbents fear it's really an endorsement of a candidate for political office. Also, incumbents could seek to stop new political movements like the Tea Party by placing unachievable conditions on their ability to raise and spend funds on behalf of candidates they support. They could say you can't do that unless you win an election, or you can't do that unless you've been this successful in a previous election, or you have a chance of being successful in a future election. The decision of whether a new political movement is politically viable would, of course, be made by their political competitor. Or Congress might criminalize expenditures by organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who might oppose a plan by Senate Democrats to increase the minimum wage on the grounds that the funds spent by the Chamber of Commerce are the equivalent of attack ads against Democratic candidates in tight re-election races. Who might be exempt from this gag rule on free speech? Well, freedom of the press. That's mentioned in the amendment. And who would freedom of the press be? Who would this might be? Well, it would be billionaires who could buy a television station, billionaires who could buy a newspaper, by any form of this new media that we see all around us. So ordinary Americans could have their ability to broadcast their views, but billionaires could buy a TV station or buy any form of media or buy a newspaper and say whatever they think. Those are the people exempt from the gag rule proposed by the Democrats. Or what about millionaire candidates? It's been considered by the Supreme Court, by all who looked at it, that while Congress might put rules on raising and spending of money, that it never could do it on your own money. So we have candidates running for president, running for the United States Senate, who spend their own money. It's never been thought of there could be a limit on that. So we might not be limiting the millionaire candidates for the Senate and their right to free speech. We might not be limiting the billionaire owners of television stations and newspapers and their right to free speech, but ordinary Americans would have a gag rule. So the gag rule that began on the Senate floor and went to the Senate hearing rooms would now be applied by Congress to the ordinary Americans across this country. The founders would never have imagined that. They passed the First Amendment to protect against this very concern that government censors would tell ordinary Americans what they can and cannot say. President Harry Truman, who liked to exercise a lot of free speech himself, warned about this in a message to Congress August 8, 1950. He said, quote, "Once a government is committed to the principle of silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all of its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear." That's President Harry Truman. Mr. President, that's not a description of this country. That's not a description of America. That's a description of our enemies. Look through our history. How would this law apply in our history? What about Harriet Beecher Stowe before the Civil War, writing Uncle Tom's Cabin? Maybe she'd want to buy an ad in the local newspaper saying, "Mr. Lincoln is a nice man, read my book." The state might not like that. They might like holding slaves. They might not like what she says and what she wants to advertise. Or what about Thomas Paine at the beginning of our country's history, writing Common Sense? Would a law like this apply to his tract, the one he published, or if he published 10, or if he published 20? Taken to its logical conclusion, this proposal could be used by a Congress or a state to ban books, to ban writings. It's shocking. We're standing here today debating such a proposal. It's not surprising. So many of you from the other side of the aisle have come to the floor, as the senator from Utah mentioned. They're not streaming through the door to defend this proposal. Every American ought to be concerned about this proposal to amend the Bill of Rights and the free speech clause in the First Amendment. They should be deeply concerned that the Senate Majority Leader and his gag group have effectively silenced their elected representatives here in the Senate, and now he wants to silence them. Thank you, Mr. President.